Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all. Thank you for joining us this evening. My apologies for the telephone going off halfway through the prayer. So that's my worst nightmare, but there you go. That's what happens when you're working at home. And no doubt at some point, I know now, a cat will appear as well. So if you suddenly see a cat walk in, then I'm expecting that now too as well. When I was thinking about a reading to share with you this evening, I was thinking of maybe a book that perhaps is easily accessible by you all, that's something that's certainly easy to read and hopefully something that you're maybe aware of or certainly could go and find out more about. And I'm going to read a short passage to you, and it comes from a book called The Religion of Spiritualism, and it's available in the SNUi's bookshop, online bookshop. And it's always a go-to book for me, especially when I'm speaking to people who might be relatively new to spiritualism, or indeed if they're perhaps seasoned as spiritualists, shall we say, but still need to be inspired and reminded about the very fundamentals of our philosophy and religion. And it's towards the end of the book, actually, and it's a conclusion. And I think it really, for me, sums up how I see spiritualism at the moment in my life. And hopefully it might resonate something with you. The religion of spiritualism is open to all, rejecting none. It challenges many long-held ideas and seeks to enhance old knowledge with new wisdom. It condemns no one, yet many challenge many to search for their own understanding of themselves and their purpose, both inwardly and in the world around them. The philosophy propounded in the religion of spiritualism is not complacent. It suggests that every day is a new day, and as such offers new opportunity and the chance to develop further as an evolving spiritual being. Spiritualism offers leadership to every individual who wishes to inspire and empower the spirit within. Spiritualists believe that God lies within each of us and around us all. We should allow his spirit to manifest through our lives in every word, thought, and deed. Spiritualism does not give a message of suppression, but one of release, not a message of restriction, but one of fulfillment, not a message of fear, but one of hope, not a message of limitation, but one of endless opportunity. The religion of spiritualism enables all to share God's love, compassion, and understanding. It can be said that God's creation of humankind represents a high point in universal spiritual evolution. Opportunities surround us whereby we can enjoy all that he has provided in order to help us achieve real happiness. Through that happiness, an individual may attain an awareness of himself, his role and responsibilities, and his relationship with his creator. It is man's task and duty to honor and represent and respond to the trust that God has placed upon him. God does indeed hold us in his hands and his heart. Now, they're very simple words, but hopefully they resonate something with you as they resonate with me. Now, for those of you who I'm sure might be online, who might be used to giving addresses, whether it be at in-person services or online like this, you will know that before we come to address people in such meetings, you always take time to think about what you're going to say. And certainly for me, I'm always thinking of what could I say that could possibly educate people about spiritualism? What could I say that could impart any knowledge that I have that I can share with them? I also think about maybe how can I inform them, maybe tell them something new or make them think about something in a different way to what they've thought about before. But most importantly, I always think it's important for speakers to try and inspire people to just move on and make that next movement, that next stage in the spiritual journey. Now that might sound quite easy, but actually it's not an easy task at all. And I'd always think that, you know, how I see spiritualism is not necessarily how you will see it. And therefore, who am I to try and put my thoughts onto you? And really, all we can do in these short addresses is just share our thoughts. And that's exactly what I want to try and do with you in this session. Importantly, as spiritualists, we're thinking, living beings. And I had a very strange experience the other week where we were speaking with a neighbour, and maybe a bit like you, throughout the pandemic, you've got to maybe know neighbours a little bit more than you have done before, because you're at home more and you maybe get a little bit more time to speak to others. And we would just have a general conversation just in the garden. And it came round to religion, as sometimes conversations do. You know that conversation and how it might come about. And it was my partner had said, oh, but John's a spiritualist. And it's just at that point where my heart sank, because I thought this is a conversation I don't want to have with my neighbours in the middle of the day. However, it was going to happen. And it was very interesting, the response I got, because the neighbour turned to me and had said, well, tell me, what is spiritualism? And you know what? I think that's one of the most difficult questions I could possibly answer. And my partner kept going on saying, says, oh, well, John's been involved in spiritualism all his life. He can tell you all about it. And you know, another thought I had instantly when I was thinking on the spot was that actually, you know, weirdly, even though I have been involved in spiritualism a long time and investigated and thought about it and analysed it in my own way, I think I probably know less about it now than I did many years ago. So that taught me something, I guess, instantly, that you can constantly read about something, learn about something, but what do you actually know? What makes sense from that knowledge that resonates with you? And actually, that changes over time. So my understanding of spiritualism now, I would say, is very different to what it was, shall we say, a few years ago, definitely 10 years ago. Is that a bad thing? I don't think that's a bad thing at all, because that's part of my evolution in understanding how I think and understand how my religion has changed as my life has changed. But to get back to that conversation, I was very much reminded of a statement I had, and it was a statement, when somebody asked that question of a few of us when we were at the Arthur Findlay College and in person, and it was a discussion evening, and somebody asked my colleague Simone Key, tell me, Simone, what is spiritualism? And I'll never forget her answer. And I'm saying this because she's here today, and I'm stealing her words, but they were wonderful, wonderful words. And they weren't cheeky words, so don't worry about it, Simone. She simply said that spiritualism is the complete opposite to materialism. And then she went on to describe what she meant by that. And you know what? I really thought just in those few words, she captured something that everybody could relate to. Now, certainly my neighbour and maybe many of us would have different ideas as to what spiritualism is, if they've ever thought about it at all in their lives before. But we all know what materialism is. We all have a concept of that reality because we're living here in the material world. And as part of that, we have material possessions, which we tend to gather throughout our life, and they hold a certain amount of value to us, whether it's monetary or at least sentimental value. And of course, cash is king for many of us, and we need money to be able to survive and put food on the table. So we're very much trapped in the materialism of life here in this physical world. Now, that's not a bad thing, because that's where we are in this stage in our lives. And that's something we have to contend with and work through and appreciate, but at the same time also not to worship, because there's much, much more to life than material stuff. So to me, and as Simone was describing, and when that person asked that question, the spiritualism is very much about thinking about a life beyond the material. It's thinking about who we are as spirit and as an essence of God, part of God, which of course is not material at all. So it helps us understand, I think, a little bit more about what matters most to us in life. What do we value? Maybe that's our relationships, our family, or our friends, that sense of love and compassion that perhaps naturally we share with each other. And indeed, as spiritualists, we are trying to encourage ourselves to do in every aspect of our life, here in this world, as well as with those who have passed on to what we call the next world. A recent, Simone and I, some of you will know, because I recognize some faces, attend our monthly philosophy meetings that we have on SNUi. It's a great session, so you need to all come to it. So look up when the next one is. But very recently, we raised this question. We asked everybody who was attending, what is spiritualism to you? And of course, everybody comes up with their own ideas. And I find that interesting and inspiring, because it's nice to know what somebody else gets out of their religion of spiritualism. And I remember one person said, to me, spiritualism has taken away the fear of life. Life both here in this world and in the next. And that resonated with me, because I think, yeah, I get that. That makes sense to me. Because in my life as a spiritualist, I have grown and learned to develop how spiritualism helps me in my everyday existence. But yeah, I would agree, has taken away a degree of fear in my life, a fear about that inevitability of physical death. And although we believe in eternal life, the concept of dying is still not something any of us really relishes. So there is obviously a fear there with that and how that might come about. So I can understand that, and even fear about making decisions in your life, and are we making the right choices? But I think something for me, spiritualism has taught me, is to have a concept and an understanding of God. And to me, that's much, much greater than an understanding of my own life or the relationships I have with others. It's about understanding what that universal mind is really like. What do I believe that to be? And like my concept of spiritualism, that has changed over the years. So how I saw God years ago is different to how I see God now. And indeed, I have to be honest and say, I guess my relationship with God is different. I remember as a younger person, I had a magic birthday this year, so it's yet to come. But you know, as you get to these milestones in your life, you think about what have you achieved, what have you done, and how different are you now to what you were 10, 20, 30 years ago. But I remember as a young person thinking about my relationship with God, and I saw God as an inspirer. I went to God when I needed help to make decisions in my life, as we all do at some point in our life. So thinking about career choices, where you want to live, relationships you want to be in, you're constantly thinking, God, I need your inspiration. I need your help. I need your wisdom to be able to make the right choices. And I remember those thoughts. And hopefully I have along the way made at least some correct choices. But now my relationship with God is different. It's about looking to God for strength and support in my time of need. And that's quite interesting. And maybe that's an age thing too. as you maybe have challenges with your health or relationships, family, as things change and people move on, I think we look to God for strength and for consolation. And I guess then too, I look to spiritualism to provide me with a support in a very different way to how it supported me as a younger person. Now that's all good, because that tells me that my religion of spiritualism has changed. It has evolved. My understanding of God has changed and evolved too. And I like that, because I don't like the idea of a religion being static. Something you read in a book that tells you, well, this is how it is, and this is how you should believe and how you should live your life. That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't fit with me. I want a religion that suits me at this time in my life and will change as I change. And I hope that God will change as I change too. So there's always an evolution there with me, my concept of both God and religion, and that which I call spiritualism. I don't know what the next 10 years is going to bring. I don't know how my idea of spiritualism will change in that time, or indeed my concept of God. But I like the fact that it is always evolving and always changing. For those of you who maybe sat for the development of mental evidential mediumship or healing mediumship, or even learning how to speak at events like this, there's certain teachers who can guide you through the process. And there's ways you can educate yourself and get the right support that you need to be able to challenge your thoughts and your talents in the right direction. But we don't have anything for that as a spiritualist. We don't have anything that teaches us or tells us what we should be doing at different stages in our lives. Very much that's up to you and I to find our own pathway. So for me, spiritualism is about finding a pathway to understanding God, which through that understanding, I get to know more about me. And the fact that that changes, that evolves, actually makes sense to me as I as an individual change, which tells me that not only hopefully am I evolving and changing, but so too is God, in order to understand me and the life in which I live and the environment in which you and I all operate together. The hour or so that we have together in this session, I think, is special, because it's a time that we all take out of our everyday lives. We put to one side our material lives, our troubles and our woes, our issues to do with work or family, and we just focus, I think, and I hope, on our spiritual reality. We're taking time to think out the box, think about a life beyond physical confines. Think about the possibilities that lies ahead through our own spiritual evolution to learn more, to become better people, and allow our spirit within to shine through and develop, and as I say, evolve. I know the last 18 months has been very trying for us all in, I'm quite sure, very different ways. But wherever you are in the world, one thing that I think we have all learned is through the pandemic, we've had to learn how to live differently. And I hope that as we come through the pandemic, and we've still got a long way to go, but I hope as we come through that experience, we do learn something from it. We learn to live differently. Many of us are working differently. Many of us are sharing times with friends and family in a different way. We're maybe even developing relationships and friendships in a way that we never thought we would. As I say, we're maybe talking to neighbors or complete and utter strangers that we never really gave time to think about doing before. That's a good thing. I think there's been a good thing for our environment, for our planet in the last 18 months too. We're not moving around that much, not through choice, because we've had no other option but to stay at home and be perhaps with our families or even on our own, just to find a new way of living. So our effects in our own life has an effect on each other. And I think we have to learn as spiritualists what we can take from this experience that we're going through at the moment, wherever you are in your life today. What can we learn as spiritualists that's going to make us stronger, healthier, and hopefully even wealthier people in the future? I believe the religion of spiritualism is something that can enrich and enhance our lives. Not only is it there to guide us and to teach us, help us make the right choices and the right decisions, but it's there to give us courage, to be able to give us strength, to be able to sometimes just get from one day to the next. I often tell the story about an elderly lady that was an inspiration, shall we say, to my grandmother, who brought my family into spiritualism. It was many, many years ago now, but I remember my grandmother saying she knew this old woman who lived in the village that she lived in. And she said, you know, she had so many things go wrong in her life. She lost all of her family in very tragic circumstances, and she suffered great ill health in her own life. So really, every time she spoke to her or saw her, there was always an issue. There was always going to be a problem. And she said, I always remember thinking, I wonder how she copes. I wonder how she deals with all of these things that are going on in life, because I don't know how I would have been able to do it. But every time she saw her, she said the old woman was always smiling. She was always happy, always could see the brighter side of life. And one day she just turned around to her and said, sorry, you know, I really don't get this. I understand what you've come through in life and what you've experienced, but what makes you so happy? How can you carry on from one day to the next? And the woman turned around and says, well, I don't tell a lot of people this. She says, but I'm going to tell you. And she said, I'm a spiritualist. And she says, I have learned in my life to be grateful for what I have and to be able to understand why I'm experiencing what I'm going through. And just from that very short conversation that she had with her, that inspired my gran to think, well, I need to find out a little bit more about this spiritualism malarkey, because it's obviously done something to help this woman in her life. What could it do for me? So although that woman wasn't standing in a public platform or on an online service talking about her philosophy to others, she lived that philosophy in her life. She exuded that. She allowed that spirit within to shine through and to, just as I said in the reading, to be able to inspire others as well as herself to evolve and to change in coping with everything that life threw at her. And I always think about that story, and whenever I've got a tough time, I think, do you know what? If she can do it, so can I. And if we can do anything to each other in this session, perhaps it's to inspire us to just try and find that inspiration from God, maybe that strength and that consolation from God that's within each and every one of us to help us get through those most difficult and challenging days in our lives. We know as spiritualists, life is eternal. You cannot die, which tells us that life here in this world, our 70 in this material physical world, is but a tiny, tiny part of eternity. So for me as a spiritualist, I have learned over the years that actually we should cherish each day as much as we possibly can. Yes, we all have our good and our bad days and our horrible experiences in life. And sometimes we just feel, do you know what? I can't cope anymore. I can't deal with what life is throwing at me. But do you know what? When we come through those tough times, I hope we're able to see that there's a brighter life that lies ahead for us here in this world. And by gaining that strength and support, we're able to move on and change and evolve spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and probably physically as well too. So if you found spiritualism in your own way and God in your own understanding, then think about how you're sharing that with other people. And I don't mean shouting it from the rooftops. I'm thinking about living by example. How are you allowing God to become part of your life? How are you allowing your understanding of spiritualism to change you as an individual? It's all very well trying to be a good medium or a good channel for healing, or even just being able to share your thoughts in the form of an address. But living that experience of spiritualism is something quite different. It's that changes you as an individual. But as I say, it's that I hope that inspires someone else to change their life. So maybe as we go away from the service tonight, and you're maybe casting your mind back over what you've thought about the service, I want you to think about how perhaps you could allow spiritualism to become more part of your everyday experience, and how you can share your understanding of life, both here and hereafter, with others that you come across. And by doing that, I hope you're able to spread that message of spiritualism. We are all ambassadors of our religion for today. And it's for us to go out there to the wider world and share our thoughts, share our philosophy by teaching by example. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you with those thoughts for you to go away and ponder about what your spiritualism means to you, and indeed how that will change, and how maybe your thoughts and understanding has changed over your experience of spiritualism too. And I wish you well in that journey. One thing I've known as a spiritualist is you're always learning. There's always something else for you to discover. And as I say, with every bit of knowledge you gain, there's always another question that comes into your mind and think, but what if, and what does that mean? But that's all good, because that helps you become a much more rounded spiritualist, as I would see it. So when people say, yeah, John's a spiritualist, or I admit I'm a spiritualist, because that is the label I tag on myself, I think it's perhaps more important to say I'm an aspiring spiritualist, because I'm constantly learning and I'm constantly trying to find ways of bringing that philosophy into my everyday life. That's made me a stronger, richer, perhaps even happier person too. And if I just a little way can help inspire you a little bit further along your spiritualistic journey, then perhaps I've done my job in this service. So with that, I want to just leave you with those thoughts and think, as I say, about your future as a spiritualist, and more importantly, how you see your relationship with God evolving and changing. Thanks for listening. Thank you.
Please join with me in prayer. Divine and loving Spirit, as we come to the end of our service today, we give thanks to you, our God, for giving us the day, for allowing us this opportunity to join together as one, in harmony and in unison. As we look to you, our God, we pray that we can help each other and to remind ourselves that we are important to each other. We are of like mind, and therefore we recognize the power of the Spirit that's within each one of us. Allow us to be the people we are meant to be, and not just those that we want to be. Allow us this time to focus on ourselves in our well-being and to help those who are struggling, no matter where, no matter who. We thank those that have come close to us today from that world we call the spirit world, to give us their love and to help us and to reassure us that there is no death, that we live for eternity. And as we join in this power and celebrate that truth within your divinity, we say thank you to you, our God, for all that you do to help us cope with life. Amen.